Time now for an in-depth look at the market news as we start the week. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Dr. Jun-sok, professor of economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thank you for making time today.
Happy to be here.
Well, so the three main indexes on Wall Street closed Friday at new record highs again. Today here in Korea, the Kospi was also higher. What's the story in the global and domestic markets?
Okay, well, the U.S. market has been hitting new records, and that's partially because there was some good news for the U.S. and Chinese economy, and not really that much of a bad news elsewhere, and the low interest rates. So let me go through that one by one. First, the Chinese growth rate was announced to be 6.1%. That was slightly below the 6.2% market forecast, but well within the range that government set between 6 to 6.5%. But I think what really made the investors happy was China's industrial production, which came out to be 6.9% growth year on year, which well beat the forecast of 5.9%. So even with the trade war, the Chinese economy may not be as bad as a lot of people feared. And then in the U.S., the housing starts surged nearly 17%, and it's the corporate earnings. It's a corporate earnings season. S&P 500 companies have started to report their earnings, and about 72% of the companies which have reported their earnings so far have beaten analyst expectations. So that is the short-term reasons why the market is being driven upwards, but also the long-term reason is that, well, the United States has lowered its interest rates, and the Fed has announced its intention to keep the rates low for a while. And whenever you have such low interest rates, you have higher stock market. For one thing, there's really not that much other places that the money can go. So the stock market is probably the only place that you can put your money and get a fairly decent return. So that is keeping the stock market up. But there is more and more fear that this high record that the stock market is achieving is perhaps not warranted, that it may be too high compared to the fundamentals. That'll be something we'll have to see throughout this year.
Yes, indeed. And then back here in Korea, we have Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki talking about the Moon administration's new Northern policy. That's, of course, a key initiative calling for closer economic cooperation with countries to the north, like Russia and Mongolia. Do you think we can expect some achievements on that front this year?
Okay, well, I tend to think that this goal was set more for diplomatic reasons than economic reasons, and the reason is that, well, we had the new South policy as a main goal last year, and even this year, the South Asian economies, the ASEAN economies, are expected to do better than the global average. But partially, I think it's because we paid attention to the South last year, so we're going to pay attention to the North this year. And also partially because the government wants to look like it's exploring new territories, that we're going to concentrate on the Northern Asian countries this year. The Northern Asian countries here refer to China, Russia, and countries which are landlocked countries which are between China, Russia, and Korea, like Mongolia, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Georgia, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Kazakhstan. It's notable that it's the 30th anniversary of relations between Korea and Russia and Korea and Mongolia. So there will be presidential visits throughout this year, or at least they're being planned, much like the president visited the South Asian countries last year. Now, specifically for Russia, Korea has negotiated a 9 bridges plan for cooperation. 9 bridges means that there's 9 areas of infrastructure and economy that Russia and Korea will cooperate in. That's railroad, electricity, shipbuilding, gas, port construction, Arctic Ocean, maritime route, agriculture, fishery, and industrial complexes, and they'll be going ahead with setting concrete plans to realize the goals that they've negotiated earlier. And for other Central Asian countries, especially the landlocked countries, because they're landlocked, infrastructure, especially transportation system, is especially important for those countries. So they represent a good opportunity for Korean construction firms if we can get multiple country cooperation going so that we can set up a transportation infrastructure so these landlocked countries can have access to sea routes in other countries.
Right. Well, Professor Yang, briefly before we go, tell us what we should be looking forward to this week in terms of market economy news.
Okay, well, there's one big statistics coming out this week. That's the fourth quarter GDP figures for Korea. And the big question is going to be whether Korea actually met the 2% growth rate goal, the line in the sand that the government had established. In addition to that, we'll have to see how much of that 2% growth was due to government spending and what was the behavior of business investment and consumption. Those will set the foundations for this year's growth. Hopefully, it'll be higher this year, but if the fourth quarter business investment and consumption were not very solid, then we'll have to be less optimistic for this year.
All right, Professor Yang, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights today.
Thank you.